General Hospital, spoilers for the week of June 7th to 11th suggest that Britt Westbourne's Kelly Thibault homecoming is getting closer, while Willow Tate Caitlin McMullen goes down a bad path. Sonny Corinthos Maurice Bernard will also be prepared to strike back. So here's what GH viewers can expect. First, Sonny and Jen Sidwell's Carlo Rota feud will worsen as a result of Christina Corinthos Davis Kate Monsey imminent death and the catastrophic outcome that Natalia Ramirez Eva LaRue recently experienced. Although Sonny will be ready to react against Sidwell soon, Sidwell may inflict additional blows of his own. Marco Rios Adrian Anchondo will be in a lot of agony after Natalia's death, so Sidwell may blame Sonny and plan to make him pay. Sonny has his own concerns about Marco and the recent rescue at the tavern, because Sonny doesn't care if Marco becomes collateral damage. Allowing Marco to suffer as a result of his father's actions is playing with fire. Will Christina amend her Ava Jerome, Maura West plot now that she has had such a close call? Christina definitely has to focus on her second chance at life and bonding with her family, but she'll probably just dig her heels in even deeper by having Cody Bell, Josh Kelly, seduce Ava. However, Christina may dig her heels in on standing up to the world's criminals, pushing Cody to strive even harder. Trina Robinson, Tabiana Ali, and Kai Taylor Jens Austin Astrup may be on the verge of a schism after Kai leaked Curtis Ashford's, Donnell Turner, Jacinda, Paige Herschel scheme to Drew Kane, Cameron Matheson. Drew will be excited to begin planning his wedding with Willow. Nina Reeves, Cynthia Watrose, on the other hand, will grow increasingly desperate to prevent Willow from going down such a bad path. Nina will not want Willow to marry Drew, so may she consider exposing the truth about her previous relationships with him? Ava warned against it, particularly since Willow may not believe Nina at this point, but Nina may reconsider her alternatives. It appears that Drew and Willow's wedding will be interrupted, so we'll see if Nina will reveal the truth or if Tracy Quartermaine, Jane Elliott, will do so instead. Of course, we should discuss Britt's forthcoming return, assuming Kelly Thibault is truly playing Britt. Thibault's character has yet to be confirmed, but she will undoubtedly return to the screen in July. Will this be related to Professor Henry Hank Dalton's, Daniel Goddard's study and possibly cloning in his lab? According to General Hospital spoilers, some major surprises are on the way in Port Charles, so keep an eye out for all of the surprising news and intense competition. Britt Westbourne's name has scarcely been mentioned in Port Charles since her sad death left a vacuum in the hearts of many, particularly Liesl, who mourned in her own unique and volatile manner. But sorrow in Port Charles was rarely straightforward, and no one truly disappeared forever. Whispers began to circulate within the medical community. A new neurologist based in Geneva had expressed a strong interest in experimental Huntington's disease treatments, and her methods sounded remarkably familiar. Liesl, anxious to think her daughter had not vanished completely, followed the route, and what she discovered made her doubt the very nature of reality. Someone who matched Britt's description checked into a secluded European institution under an assumed name months ago, after the world had already mourned her. The components did not add up. The timeline was hazy, but Liesl clung to the one thing that offered her hope, the possibility that Britt had not died at all, but had gone to protect those she loved from the agonizing decline she knew was unavoidable. Back in Port Charles, Liesl was fueled by hope. She contacted Robert Scorpio and tugged every thread she could find. Even Anna, who was initially hesitant, began to wonder if they had all been too ready to believe the worst. And when a photograph surfaced, grainy and untrustworthy, but frighteningly familiar, Liesl was persuaded. Britt was alive, and she was coming back. However, Britt's return would not be the sweet, cheerful homecoming her mother had hoped for. Secrets had gathered in her absence, much like dust in an old room. Her connection to the hospital, the harm her past had caused to reputations and relationships, and her dying moments, if they were truly final, had all left wounds that not everyone was ready to heal. Her presence would alter dynamics, rekindle old wounds, and most importantly, come at a moment when the Corinthos family was already collapsing from within. Willow Corinthos had struggled for her life, faced excruciating suffering during her cancer treatments, and clung to her family through it all. She had given Nina a chance despite all warnings to the contrary, believing that the cycle of pain would be ended. But when Nina's recent deception was revealed, Willow felt betrayed on a level she hadn't anticipated. Everything Nina had claimed to desire. Peace, forgiveness, and family had been a show. And Willow's forgiveness had been the cost. Willow's life had changed once Michael revealed Nina's truth. She did not shout. She did not cry. Rather, she silently unraveled. The untruth had hit a chord deeper than anyone could perceive. Nina had not just lied about Sonny. She had twisted every moment afterward. She had invaded their family under false pretenses, posing as a grandma seeking recovery, and had gained entry into Willow and Wiley's lives through emotional blackmail disguised as love. It made Willow doubt everything. Her judgment, her intuition, her own ability to trust. It started with simple things. Missed phone calls, missed therapy appointments, and sleepless nights. Michael was aware of it, of course, but Willow was a master at pretending to be fine when everything inside her was breaking apart. She had spent years doing it previously. She could do it again. But the fissures in her resolve deepened. Her reactions got harsher, her patience with the children dwindled, and the walls she had fought so hard to knock down began to rise again. One night, Sarah stood alone in the kitchen after Michael had gone to bed. The lights were off. The home remained silent. And in her hand was a small bottle of pills. A leftover prescription for anxiety that had been sitting in the back of the cabinet for months. Her grasp on the bottle tightened as she stared blankly ahead, the quiet of the room increasing the racket in her head. She did not take them. Not that night. But she didn't return the bottle either. Michael realized something was wrong, but he was absorbed by his increasing disagreement with Sonny. Their already complex relationship had utterly worsened after Michael revealed Nina's infidelity. Sonny had taken time to process the reality, but the consequences were unavoidable. When Sonny eventually confronted Nina, he was furious, not just disappointed. He did not yell. He didn't break anything. He simply informed Nina that she had destroyed her last bridge. He accused her of creating a deception that had shattered his family and worse, of humiliating him in front of his children. Nina sought to defend herself, arguing that she had acted out of love and that her actions were mistaken but not malevolent. But Sonny was not interested in subtleties. He told her to go. He told her he didn't want to see her around Donna again. And when she inquired if he still loved her, Sonny did not respond. He simply walked away. Nina wasn't the only one who sensed Sonny's rage. He also directed his rage inward. Guilt gnawed at him. He defended Nina to Carly, Michael, and even Ava. He decided to think that love could mend what history had broken. And now all he saw was a woman who had used love to manipulate him. He was finished playing nice. Sonny had always responded to betrayal with immediate and brutal repercussions. This time would not be different. But what made matters worse was that the betrayal came from within his house, within his heart. Instead of attacking Nina with his fists, he targeted her where it would hurt the most. Her prestige, allies, and business. Sonny withdrew his funds from all Crimson-related ventures with a single stroke of the pen. He called large advertisers and utilized favors from media relationships to cut ties. Nina's magazine, into which she had put her heart and soul, was rapidly deteriorating. He did not stop there. He made it plain to the 5 families that anyone who supported Nina's enterprises would lose Sonny Corinthos' protection. In the realm of Port Charles business, that was the death penalty. Nina felt the ground slip beneath her. One by one the doors closed. Invitations were withdrawn. Even Ava, caught between loyalty and self-preservation, began to create space. Nina got poisoned overnight. The heartbreak was awful, but the loneliness was far harder. Without Sonny, Crimson, and her relationships with Willow and Wiley in shambles, she had no anchor. Meanwhile, Britt's reappearance caused shockwaves throughout the hospital. She did not make a grand arrival or hold a press conference. She simply arrived one morning, signed in, and went straight to the locker room as if nothing had happened. Staff froze. Epiphany, who had returned short for consulting work, was the first to speak. "You're supposed to be dead," she stated plainly. Britt just smiled. "Guess I missed the memo." The details were purposefully vague. Britt explained that she had faked her death to avoid the impending death that Huntington's disease would bring, that she had received treatment in Europe, and that her condition had stabilized. She did not anticipate forgiveness. She did not expect to be understood. She only wanted a chance to restore the life she'd left behind. However, not everyone welcomed her with warm arms. Terry was cautious. Elizabeth was skeptical. Liesl, while pleased, couldn't help but resent Britt's decision to let her believe she was dead. Nonetheless, mother and daughter began the arduous task of reconstructing what had been lost. Britt's homecoming couldn't have come at a worse moment for Willow, who was now experiencing her own trauma spiral. Seeing someone return from the dead, so to speak, scared her. She felt as if the universe was pulling a trick on her. Britt, who had once supported her during her pregnancy, had returned unexpectedly, just as her own emotional stability seemed to be slipping away. The pressure rose. Willow tried to keep her cool for the sake of the kids, Michael, and public appearances. However, her internal monologue was drowning her. She began utterly withdrawing, missing work, isolating herself in the bathroom for hours under the guise of taking long showers, and avoiding phone calls from her support group. One night, after putting Wiley to bed, she sat on the floor of his room and grieved quietly, so he wouldn't wake up and Michael wouldn't hear. Michael finally addressed her. She admitted she wasn't feeling well, but argued she didn't need aid, that she only needed time. Michael, knowing her too well, called for help anyhow. Brooke Lynn, ever observant, stepped in and spent the night at the house to provide a distraction. Even Brooke Lynn's presence, which is typically a bright point, couldn't get Willow out of her fog. Sonny, meanwhile, focused on the greater picture. With Nina out of his life, he refocused on safeguarding his business. However, his opponents detected a flaw in the armor. Corinthos had reportedly softened. Nina had distracted him, leaving him defenseless. Sonny didn't like that perception. He convened a conference with his associates and declared that any questions about his authority would be dealt with decisively. A competitor crew from Philadelphia made the mistake of testing his resolve by transporting merchandise through Port Charles without permission. Sonny retaliated by sending Britt to intercept the shipment and publicly torch it. He wasn't simply reclaiming control. He was conveying a message. The king was still on his throne. But Sonny had not imagined how deeply Willow's degeneration would affect Michael, and by extension, himself. Michael was devastated when Willow's mental state deteriorated to the point where she was committed for observation following a panic-induced fainting episode. He hated himself for not noticing it sooner. I blamed Nina. He blamed everything and everyone for the disintegration of the woman he loved. Sonny paid Willow a discreet visit without fanfare. He didn't enter her chamber, instead standing outside the door, watching her sleep, her face pallid and her breathing shallow. It served as a warning that the consequences of lying and betrayal are not always obvious. Sometimes it was a quiet unraveling, taking its toll one heartbeat at a time. Sonny did not come home after leaving the hospital that night. He went to the boxing gym alone and let out his wrath on the punching bag till his knuckles bled. He had spent his life defending his family, but somewhere along the way the rot had set in. He'd let love cloud his judgment. This would never happen again. As summer neared, the streets of Port Charles were alive with speculation. Britt's reappearance sparked both optimism and skepticism. Willow's condition reminded everyone just how thin the line between survival and surrender may be. And Sonny, reborn in fire and vengeance, wasn't simply fighting back. He was about to transform the world which had allowed weakness to fester. Everyone believed they knew how the narrative would end. In Port Charles, however, endings were usually disguised as new beginnings. General Hospital spoilers indicate that Sasha Gilmore Corbin, Sophia Matson, may become concerned about Jen Sidwell, Carlo Rhoda, and the potential that he is responsible for Daisy Gilmore's, Levi Clark Coughlin, stalking. Will Godfather Jason Morgan, Steve Burton, soothe Sasha with a pledge to protect Daisy? Fans of General Hospital are aware that someone has been lurking around Daisy and triggering strange happenings. Daisy was placed in the incorrect hospital bassinet, and things became odd at the Quartermain home. Someone once turned on Daisy's mobile phone in her bedroom. On another occasion, Sasha was disturbed to discover Daisy facing the wrong direction in her cot, and discovered she was wearing a different colored onesie. All of these instances are beginning to worry Sasha, and the attack on Christina Corinthos Davis, Kate Monsey, at Charlie's pub may make her even more anxious that her daughter is being targeted in some way. Because Jen Sidwell, Carlo Rhoda, will undoubtedly be the primary suspect in Christina's death, Sasha may be concerned that he is also responsible for all of Daisy's weird behavior. After all, Sasha is no longer concealing Daisy's paternity, and everyone knows she is Sonny Corinthos, Maurice Bernard, granddaughter. Daisy is now a target, and this alone could lead to her involvement in any growing mafia drama. It could make Sasha nervous that this is all leading up to Daisy's kidnapping, or some other dramatic step that puts her in risk. This could also make Sasha reconsider the $250,000 agreement she made with Sidwell, prompting her to express her remorse to Jason. Sasha may resort to Jason, concerned that Sidwell is messing with her head and endangering Daisy. Of course, Jason may not believe it is Sidwell's nature to send someone to gaslight Sasha, but he may swear to protect Daisy nonetheless. As Daisy's godfather, Jason will undoubtedly feel a feeling of responsibility to assist Sasha and Michael Corinthos, Rory Gibson, in keeping her safe. Despite Sasha's potential fears about Sidwell and what he might do next, is there another threat she should be concerned about? There have been some suggestions that Willow Caitlin McMullen, may be blacking out and stalking Daisy, possibly while adopting a different personality if she has dissociative identity disorder. Regardless, General Hospital spoilers predict Sasha has more weird experiences with Daisy ahead of her, so keep an eye out for any problematic developments. Sasha had always known the world could be harsh, but the feeling of eyes on her again, the discomfort creeping under her skin, was something she thought she'd forgotten long ago. She attempted to convince herself that the worst was behind her, that the medications, hallucinations, and manipulation by Gladys and Dr. Montague were all in the past. But now something had changed. That eerie sense of foreboding was back. Only this time it wasn't caused by a syringe or a forced hospital stay. It emerged from the darkness. Also from Daisy. Initially it appeared to be harmless. A few weird notes appeared on her automobile windshield. A bouquet of daisies was placed at the deception office. Sasha had even laughed, assuming it was an overzealous fan. But soon the messages became darker and more personal. Nobody should know anything about her life unless they were following her. I am watching her. The joyful flower started to feel like warnings. Daisy's name started to feel more like a danger than an innocent admirer. She told Maxie, attempting to seem nonchalant, but her voice quivered more than she wanted. Maxie appeared frightened, but attempted to reassure her. They chalked it up to nerves, or some lasting trauma in Sasha's body. However, someone broke into the deception office one night. Nothing was stolen. Just drawers opened, papers reorganized, and a photo of Sasha with her late son Liam taken and placed on her desk. That was the moment she could no longer deny it. Daisy was more than simply someone with a crush. This was someone who wanted her to know how close they were. Closer than anyone should be. It wasn't long before Sasha began to wonder who may be arranging things from behind the scenes. And one name, unshakable and terrifying, kept coming up in her mind: Sidwell. He wasn't supposed to pose a threat anymore. Sasha had heard that he was being investigated and kept at bay. But the power he wielded, slick, deceptive, and always concealed behind proxies, meant she could never be too certain. Daisy's erratic and risky behavior, as well as the breadcrumbs she left behind, felt like a calling card. Sidwell's fingerprints were not visible, but Sasha couldn't resist the suspicion that Daisy wasn't acting alone. That person was guiding her. Sidwell had every motive to want Sasha scared, isolated, and vulnerable. Jason had been absent from her life for some time, not by choice, but due to fate and the long winding journey of his return from the grave. When he returned, things had changed. Sasha was no longer the delicate widow he had knew, nor was he simply Sonny's enforcer. He'd seen and lost too much, and somewhere in the quiet between them was a common knowledge of suffering that didn't need to be expressed openly. Sasha confided in Jason without tears or hysterics. She merely sat across from him in the Metro Court, her eyes hazy and her fingers curled around a mug of lukewarm coffee. "I think someone's watching me again," she told me. Jason did not react immediately. He seldom did. Instead, he scrutinized her, as if weighing the significance of her remarks. Then he nodded once. "Tell me everything." And she did. She informed him about the flowers, notes, the office break-in, and Daisy. Especially Daisy. Jason listened in silence, occasionally asking for clarification, but primarily allowing her to continue. After she finished, there was a long pause. Then he leaned forward slightly. "I'll handle it." She blinked at him. "What does that mean?" It signifies that whoever is doing this, whether Daisy or someone behind her, will cease. I promise. Jason rarely made promises. Not because he was untrustworthy, but because he understood that the world didn't always allow you to keep promises. However, when he stated it, Sasha believed him. She felt something release in her chest, as if a breath she had been holding in was finally leaving. But fear stayed. The following few days were tense. Jason moved quietly, requesting Spinelli to investigate Daisy's past, while also looking into Sidwell's most recent business operations. What he discovered was alarming. Daisy had no past connection to Sasha. No fan sites, no letters, no history of infatuation, until 3 months ago, when she impulsively began volunteering at a shelter that Sasha periodically supported. She then began to insert herself into Sasha's life, attending events, fabricating unexpected meetings, and gradually becoming a fixture in the background. Sidwell's financial dealings, however, raised the most concerns. A tiny, untraceable amount from a shell firm was transferred into Daisy's account 2 weeks before the first bloom arrived. Jason's gut told him all he needed to know. Sidwell was organizing this and testing the waters. Daisy was either a pawn or a voluntary participant. Jason informed Sasha as gently as he could. She nodded, but her hands shook. "He's trying to break me again," she said quietly. Jason reached out and covered her hand with his. "He won't." But this was easier said than done. The mental games intensified. Sasha received a video message of herself asleep, captured via her bedroom window. When she switched residences, someone left a trail of daisies outside the new building the next day. The cops had nothing tangible to work with, and Sasha was starting to fray at the edges. Her hard-earned strength was being put to the test yet again. Jason, becoming increasingly anxious, enlisted additional security, stationing guards covertly outside Sasha's home and tracking her activities. He did not ask permission. He merely acted. Because in his mind, Sasha was more than simply a friend. She was a family member. The type of family you chose and safeguarded without a specific reason. Meanwhile, Daisy remained elusive. She was questioned, but she had solid alibis. She smiled too much, denied everything, and portrayed herself as a misunderstood admirer who only wanted to connect with someone she respected. But Jason saw through her. He was familiar with that type of manipulation, the combination of innocence and subtle threat. That was Sidwell's signature. Then came the turning point. Sasha was returning to her car after visiting Brando's burial when she was confronted in the parking lot. Daisy moved out of the shadows. This time, however, her tone was not sugary. It was cut and cold. "You should stop digging," Daisy said. "You're ruining everything." Sasha froze. "What do you want from me?" "It's not about what I want," Daisy growled. "It's about what you deserve." Daisy disappeared before Sasha could answer. Just like that. The encounter rocked her to her core. She called Jason, her voice shaking, and he arrived in minutes. He didn't say anything when he embraced her, but his jaw was tight. That was when he realized talking wasn't enough. Jason paid Daisy a visit that night. "There are no threats. This is just a reminder. If you go near Sasha again, you'll regret it," he told her. "This ends now." Daisy laughed in his face. "Go ahead. Hurt me. That's what you guys do, right? But you can't keep the truth from getting out." Jason did not respond to the bait. He stared at her till she turned away. And then he walked away, not because he was giving up, but because he was getting ready for what was next. Spinelli discovered the burning rifle a few days later. Daisy has a tenuous connection to one of Sidwell's offshore accounts, but it is enough to warrant further examination. Jason delivered it to Anna, who was already silently watching Sidwell but had not linked him to the harassment. With Jason's information, she launched a more formal investigation. Sasha was still not safe, but there was a way ahead. She began treatment again, this time not just for rehabilitation, but also to reclaim her sense of control. Jason made it a point to check in with her every day, sometimes just sending a message and other times sitting quietly with. One afternoon they sat on the pier, watching the ocean ripple beneath them. "Why do you always show up for me?" she asked. Jason did not glance at her immediately away. He fixed his gaze on the lake. "Because I didn't before," he explained. "Not when it mattered most." Sasha's eyes hurt. She recalled the pain and loneliness after Brando's death, the fall into addiction, and how many people had vanished. Jason had left and she didn't blame him, yet she felt his absence more than ever. "You're here now," she replied gently. "I always will be," he answered. Days went into weeks. Daisy's behavior got increasingly unpredictable, and her paranoia eventually caused her to slip. She was discovered attempting to enter Sasha's building disguised as a delivery worker, and this time the police had a reason to detain her. A warrant found a trove of personal stuff, including Sasha's discarded mail, photos, and even a pair of gloves she previously wore to an event. But the biggest surprise came when Daisy broke down under duress and confessed. Sidwell had promised her money, safety, and even celebrity in exchange for upsetting Sasha's life. He wanted her shattered, paranoid, and discredited. He considered Sasha as a threat to his growing influence in Port Charles, particularly given her connections to deception and the public platform she was gradually recovering. Sidwell was legally charged following Daisy's confession and Spinelli's discovery of a digital trail. The case would be lengthy and complicated, but the wheels of justice were turning. Sasha felt overwhelmed with relief, but the scars would take time to heal. Still, she felt a change, not simply because the immediate threat had passed, but also because she no longer felt alone in it. Jason's presence had provided more than just protection. It had been grounded. They didn't discuss labels or expectations. But something happened between them. A quiet friendship formed not through romance, but through something deeper. Loyalty, understanding, shared suffering, and a mutual pledge never to let each other down again. As summer arrived in Port Charles, Sasha stood outside Deception, watching the city come alive around her. She did not feel entirely safe yet, but she felt stronger. Not because the threat had passed, but because she had confronted it and emerged victorious. Not simply surviving but gradually recovering herself. Jason stood in the distance like he always did. Not as a shadow or ghost from the past, but as a promise kept. The General Hospital recap for Tuesday, July 1st reveals that Natalia Ramirez was proclaimed deceased. Marco Rios was also Cristina Corinthos Davis' hero, but Sonny Corinthos remained skeptical. Cristina attempted to use a fire extinguisher in Charlie's pub, but it proved ineffective because the flames were spreading too quickly. Marco was talking on the phone in his automobile when Lucas Jones yelled about something in the distance and abruptly disconnected. Marco noticed the fire and raced into the building to see if anyone was inside. Cristina told Marco where she was, so he grabbed a blanket from his car and covered them both as they exited the back door. Jen Sidwell watched the fire from the tower at Windmere and called to report that the work had been completed. Alexis Davis arrived shortly after and insisted on reviewing some legal documents relating to Sidwell's account, which Marco was managing. Sidwell complained about it being a waste of time, and that Alexis did not trust Marco because of his father. At the Quartermain estate, Sasha Gilmore Corbin looked concerned about leaving Daisy Gilmore alone in her crib, so she kept her in the living room as she napped in her bassinet. Jason Morgan alerted Sonny that Natalia had yet to show up for her flight to Belize. Sonny and Jason left after hearing about the Charlie's pub fire over the phone. Molly Lansing Davis arrived late and handed Michael Corinthos a gift before adoring the baby with Sasha. When Molly received a call about the 3-alarm fire at Charlie's pub, she panicked because Christina was in danger. Cody Bell drove Molly and tried to calm her down on the way there. Molly informed Alexis of the flames, and Alexis became concerned about getting a boat back from Windmere because Christina could be inside. Sidwell appeared concerned about Christina's safety, and once alone, he shouted at someone on the phone about how the tavern was supposed to be empty. Jocelyn Jacks provided Lucas with updates on Natalia's appearance as a surprise baptism crasher earlier. Meanwhile, Harrison Chase took an officer inside Natalia's room, so Sonny's henchman, Paul, fled from outside her apartment. Chase caught a glimpse of Paul leaving and knocked on Natalia's door, but there was no answer. Anna Devane arrived and went inside with Chase, but Natalia was comatose on the sofa from all the medications and alcohol. Chase and Anna discussed the possibility that Natalia attempted suicide, or that the incident was staged. After Chase remembered seeing the guy outside Natalia's room, Anna wanted to search through security footage to find him. Natalia was transported to GH, where Elizabeth Baldwin and Isaiah Gannon's attempts to save her proved useless. When the hour of death arrived, Liz called Lucas in the hopes that he would be with Marco.